Now, recently there was a BBC program that claimed that the Anglo-Saxon invasion never happened. Now, let me give you the official history, or the actual history. What happened is that after the fall of the Roman Empire, which Rome ruled from about here, Hadrian's Wall down, before the Romans got there, there was people known as the Celts. The Celts inhabited Ireland, Britain, Gaul, which is modern-day France, or older Gaul, which is the Hispanic Peninsula, Spain, the Iberian Peninsula, even into northern Italy, and they had settlements as far away as Anatolia, Galatians, the Gallia. They were Celts. Nowadays, the Celts are restricted to Ireland and Wales, as well as being spread out throughout the Americas and the world. Australia has a lot of them. North America has a lot of them. But the English are Anglo-Saxons. They come from Sweden, Denmark, and Germany. They're the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. And Anglo-Saxon and Frisian are almost identical. What's known as Old English and Frisian are near identical. And this happened in the 5th, 6th century, the 6th century, the 500s. And 200 years later, the exact same people from that area would come and they'd be called the Vikings. Now, let's see if I can scroll over. You can see it here better. See the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons came and settled in East Saxony. The East Saxons, that's known as Essex. South Saxons is Sussex. West Saxons, Wessex. And you had, Anglo-Saxon, Jute, and or Anglo-Saxon and Jute names for these places. The Anglo-Saxons were stopped at the border of Wales. This is where the mythology and the legend of King Arthur comes up, because he stopped. That's where the Anglo-Saxons were stopped at, right? And they came in and they were barbarians and they slaughtered and they wanted land, so they killed everyone. They were like the Vikings. They came in, they killed every human being there, took the land, right? That's how they worked. They weren't interested in having an indigenous population of slaves. They could loot or take them from somewhere else. So they just massacred who was over there. And the Celts were pretty much defenseless. The Celts initially invited, or the Britons, I should say, the Latino Celts, they had invited them over in Kent to protect from raids from Ireland and other pirates. And as they were starting to get more aggressive, they met, I believe it was at Stonehenge. It's known as the Night of the Long Knives. Now, the Celts were civilized people, and they never brought weapons to negotiations. Nobody ever did, but the Anglo-Saxons were dogs. They were scum. That's an insult to dogs, actually. So they killed all the Celtic leaders right there. And now, when the Anglo-Saxon invasion happened, you see a complete change in culture, complete change in language, complete change in religion, because before, Roman Britain, and even post-Roman Britain, was Christian. Ireland had actually become extremely Christian, but not by Rome, just by evangelizing. But when the Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes got there, they worshipped Odin and Thor and Freya, and our days of the week reflect that. You can see where they see Frisia down here, the Frisians, the Angles, the Jutes, and Saxons, and they're still Saxony today. And the difference between the Franks and the Saxons was the Franks used the Franciscus throwing axe, and the Saxons used the sax. And then up here were the Picts, and I'll get into how the Picts became Scottish, because the Scots were actually from Ireland. That's a different story. Now, there is a new theory going around, because the English want to be related to the Romans, right? The English have this idea of, I'm not saying all English people do, but the public school English, the upper crust, the typical arrogant, aloof English, imperialistic kind of view, because they had viewed themselves as like the successors of Rome. When when Rome was ruling Britain, they were living in Scandinavia, living in mud huts and eating dog meat, and they couldn't read or write. Now, forgive me for that. Now, there's a man who's trying to claim, and he made a documentary on the BBC, trying to claim that the Anglo-Saxons were always in southern Britain, that they were the natives. It wasn't the Celts, that they were there when the Romans were there. Which this is ridiculous. Genetics show that somewhere between 1500 to 2000 years ago, there was a 50 to 90%, or not 50, a 85 to 100% extermination, change in population. And this man claims, oh, that's impossible. The brutal Anglo-Saxons, who, these same people just a few years later, who would become the Vikings, wouldn't be that brutal. For some reason, the image isn't working anymore, but I'll go on. And he claims that these people always had this Germanic blood, this Frisian blood, and they were always in southern Britain, even though they're completely surrounded by Celtic people, before the Franks had invaded France, what's now France, and that they changed their language, their customs, their culture, their religion, the way they farmed, the way they made pottery, their whole political system, just as a fad, because it was just Germanic. The Germanic way of life was just more popular. So he's trying to argue that these were ancient Germanic peoples who acted Celtic for thousands of years until the great barbarian invasion and migration happened. And then they happened just to switch over within a few years, not even a decade, to being completely like people from Saxony, Denmark, Frisia, and Sweden. I mean, it's just ludicrous. It's beyond it's just silly. So all of the archaeology, all of the DNA and genetic testing done on the bones and everything, all the pottery, all the culture, all the archaeology, the fact that it changed from the fact that they forgot how to write. They couldn't read or write because they got rid of the church. Couldn't build roads anymore. And Christianity had to be brought back in brought into Pictland, which became Scotland, because the Northern Irish were known as the Scotty. Actually, all of the Irish were known as the Scotty or the Scots. And Pictland adopted the Scot everything from them, so they became known as the Scottish. And then they were starting to convert these Anglo-Saxon invaders, but also during that time Rome was sending emissaries there. and they eventually adopted Latin Christianity. But it's completely ridiculous that, I mean, you can go find this online about the Anglo-Saxon invasion on YouTube. This documentary that the BBC put out trying to claim that it's a lie, that the Anglo-Saxon invasion never happened. Even though, I mean, just ask yourself what's more plausible. You know, that's like saying, that's the equivalent of me saying, you know what? Me and everybody who lives around here, we're not from, you know, Poland, Ireland, England, Syria, Italy, Argentina, Mexico, Greece. We're actually all Potawatomi Indians. And when the United States expanded, we just adopted all of their ways and cultures. But we're actually, you know, the Potawatomi Indians that were indigenous to here. That's how foolish it is. Let me know your comments and what you think about this. Peace to you.